Started now. Before we get into the presentations, I do want to share who our presenters are. So this is the order of our presenters. We'll start off with Craig Hayward, who is the systems librarian at the State Library of North Carolina's Accessible Books and Library Services. Philip Woodward and Chris Hendricks from the NC Council on Developmental Disabilities will then present. And afterwards, we'll have Christy Brinson from the Division of Vocational Rehab Services, Christy and Harrington, Community Employment Specialist at the Division of Services for the Blind, and Sue Obenshain, and then Jennifer Cook, who's part of the Division of Services for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. And with that, we'll have, I just want to share, I included the links for the presentation slides in an email at noon today, but we also have a Google Doc of resources that were prepared by the presenters. Feel free to peruse that after the webinar. I'll also include it in the follow-up email that I'll be sending later today. And with that, I want to introduce Craig, and he'll get us started this afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our presentation. I think we have some action-packed, or we have a pretty good group of people today gathered to help present some topics to you. Before we begin, I just want to say a little bit about my library myself. I was in public libraries for 6 years before I came to what we call ABLS, ABLS. We put an E in there for being able. It's the State Library of North Carolina Accessible Books and Library Services. I've been here for 15 plus years. And that time I've become, I'm called the systems librarian, a digital services librarian. I'm a technology librarian, but I've become more of an accessibility librarian because of my position. I'm uniquely positioned in some ways because I am really the only person on the state library staff that really deals with accessibility, online accessibility, and a lot of in-person things. Our staff does a good job of accessible programs. We have a really great collections librarian here who does a good job with accessible collections. Hint, hint, we're a good resource for you to use for those types of things. I'm going to try to keep my talk short and my speech focused. I have a script I'm kind of reading off of. I apologize. I'm going to try not to go too off the rails. I will say, too, I want to give you a useful presentation of a framework for your library itself to offer resources that are available, to make resources available to help patrons with disabilities find work, but also how you can make your space more inviting. The other thing is we have a lot of people here today, so I'm going to try to keep this short as well. So next slide. Okay, so no discussion I ever have on anything accessible ever does not have the topic. We always have what accessibility means, or what is accessibility. So as you can see, it's the practice of making information, activities, and/or environments sensible, meaningful, usable to as many people as possible. That means that if you offer it to all your groups that way, everybody gets a benefit. There's a contextual argument out of this that's referred to the curb cut phenomena. People aren't familiar with that. In the 1990s, when the ADA, American with Disabilities Act, was passed, municipalities were required to put in ramps, literally make cuts in their curbs to allow wheelchairs to go over sidewalks and things. Lots of businesses and organizations put in ramps to get into their buildings, automated doors, etc. The reason why this is important is because that's something everybody uses, because what happened? Delivery people realized, hey, the postal guy, the UPS guy realized I can wheel my cart over that curb, not have to wheel it up a set of stairs, not have to put it over the hard curb. I can make my life easier. I can use an automated door. And so I'm pretty sure that all of us, we enter our library buildings, a lot, maybe not all of us, but a lot of us might hit that button on the door, or you go to the mall, hit that button on the door, it opens the door for you automatically. So you're using what's called a curb cut, because it's something that was made for one group, an accessibility enhancement for one group that is being used by everyone. So, and also, if you're like me and you like British television, I turn on the captioning, not because I have a hearing impairment, because I can't understand what the actors are saying often. the dialogue. So I can read the dialogue. That's what we're talking about. Siri on your phone. It was developed for one group. Speech technology for phones and portable devices was developed for one group, and it's used by all. So that's what we're talking about. So accessibility means equitability. It's equal access for everyone, not just specific groups. You do it for one group, you do it for all. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about accessibility in your library. Okay, so let's ask the questions. Is your library accessible? Do you know if it is? Are your surroundings approachable? What I mean by that is, are things kind of non-intimidating for everyone? Could somebody find what they need to be? Are things well marked? Are things at a proper level? Is your staff accessible? We think about the building, but we never think about the people sometimes in it. Is your staff approachable? When they talk to people, do they talk to people? Do they make eye contact? Do they make sure that people can hear them? Then that's not just for people who have hearing impairment. It's also people that have vision impairment as well. It's respecting people, but understand also that many people that have one form of disability have others. So we have patrons here who are deafblind. We have patrons here who some days you wonder, people are screaming in their office. It's because they're working with a patron because they're very hard of hearing and they're also blind or low vision or whatever to get materials. People that use wheelchairs. Are things adjustable? In the end, it comes down to a question of you're there to help them find the resources they need and connect them. So the other point I make here is a couple things, actually. A comforting voice. You always want to have that goes for everybody. That's customer service. Good customer service involves a calming, gentle voice that you want to help people. And patience. Patience comes in very handy in all circumstances, regardless of person, but particularly in my environment, because I have a lot of elderly folks, and I go through the process of teaching people how to download books, how to work with things, how to find resources on the website, how to make sure things are in proper order. And I just try to instruct them that everybody can do it. Whether you're in your 90s or 100 years old, or whether you're, a 4-year-old, a teen, you can do it. We try to encourage everybody to be self-sufficient and independent. Oh, and also the other thing I didn't mention on the slide is the reference interview. As a librarian, the reference interview will be one of your best friends because it will be very useful to you for establishing those baseline questions, figuring out what you want to do. That's going to be part of the process of helping people to find resources, etc. But it's good for everybody. It works for everybody. And it's really your one tool in your toolkit you can use all the time. Next slide. What do we have? What does our library have? Well, I've given you a link at the top of the presentation. I could take you there, but I really just want to talk a little bit through it. A little bit of context. We have what are called accessible resources. These cover 4 main quadrants. One's for working. That's all your job guides, career guides, work skills, training resources, accessibility needed to work, and online meeting guides. With the pandemic, we realized that we're doing a lot of events and a lot of other circumstances, whether it's staff or the public, we're presenting things online. We needed to give people good accessibility guides to using Zoom, Teams, and coming soon, actually WebEx, because WebEx is actually the main one that the state uses. We're a state government agency, so it's part of the state is they really like us to be able to use WebEx, so we're testing that as well. Resources for living. You may have somebody not just looking for a job, they may be new to what's going on in their life. So you want to help them out with their day-to-day living, technology, advocacy. These people here that are here today are kind of advocates as well, and other organizations. And we also have a nice link to the American Disabilities Act as a reminder of what it kind of looks like, and to remind you what the law is and why we kind of do what we do. But one nice thing too, I will say about the accessibility resources page is that we really vet those resources to make sure that we're not selling information. We're not trying to sell the information. We're trying to help people just find what they need. They are really trying to be non-judgmental and kind of middle of the road resources to help people. It was built way back in the day when I started. We brought this concept along to give people a good set of resources, a good toolkit to do anything. There's also a really neat one there for recreation as well, playing games and things like that. In fact, if you want to show them, Devin, the site, just quickly. This is it. If you go in, you can see you have the 4 major buckets for living, for working, for learning, and for recreation. This is the living site. We have it subdivided up. We have taken a lot of time to go through, there's like the Raleigh Lions Club and things like that, assistive technology support, broadband and internet benefits. This is for people to live their lives. It's also good for employers to know about this as well. I want to back up and let's take a look at the working ones. And this is all kind of a good toolkit you can throw people. You can give this to the public. You can beg, borrow, and steal these if you want for your own libraries. These are freely available resources. We've just taken the time and put them together for people so they can find them. This is probably one of the most popular parts of our website that people come to, just to find these things and do these things, all kinds of stuff. And go back to the presentation if we like. Let's go on the next slide. Okay, so now, back up one more, sorry. So now some quick questions for you to maybe answer. Quick thoughts. Can you turn on the built-in accessibility in your computers? Do you know that you have built-in accessibility in your computers? Probably, if you have public access computers, you have it. Now, maybe your IT department has prohibited things from happening. That's a discussion to have with your administration to make sure that you can do that for people, to give them the best experience when they come in to use your computers. You want to allow people to be independent if you can. It's not always a matter of you holding their hand, but it's a matter of you pointing them in the right direction and helping them get there. Is your library's online presence accessible? I go over this a lot. I do a lot of this kind of remediation, and I do accessible websites, and I do a lot of online accessibility. But if you're putting up accessible pieces, are your headings correct? Is everything in order? Are you using headings for formatting? Or are you using them for actually what we call semantic climbing? Because most people that use screen readers that I know of go by a thing called the links list or the headings list. They will navigate a page by the headings. So you're providing a service. You're also doing a much better job for making things semantic. Did you also know there's a group of people here that are represented today that can help you out? These are across the board people. The other thing I want to throw a nugget your way that I've put in the resources area is our own ABLS guide to accessible library services. It's a LibGuide. So it's freely available to y'all, and everybody here in this group can look at it. What we've done is we have gone, if you want to open it up, Devin, for me for a minute, this is going to end off my presentation anyway. We have a little bit about the guide, and then we have it divided into facets, like what it means to be accessible customer service in different areas, includes mobility, blind and visually impaired etiquette, mobility etiquette, etc. So etiquette's very important. Etiquette is actually something that's drilled into us from day one at this library. There's also on how to do accessible presentations. We do a lot of them. We go on the road and explain to libraries how they can make themselves more accessible. We have promotions, etc., and things like that we do within planning exercises. Accessible collections are near and dear to us, things in Braille, large type, what we call digital talking book, and audio accessibility. And then accessible technology itself, how to make your website more usable, more friendly, how to make it work with more groups of people, how to make it work for everybody, and also the rules in place. What are the things we're standing out? What is WCAG? What does that mean? Website Accessibility Consortium Group. Those kinds of things. So you can use this as a guide to help you. And I will tell you, the reason we developed this is because we've been doing our presentations for years, but we never really had a place to send people to give them a takeaway from it. So this is what we developed for y'all. It's also a living guide. So I encourage you to take advantage of this living guide. And if you have feedback, anything you might feel missing, anything we could add or include, we're happy to listen to your feedback. As I said, I'm Craig. I'm here all week. Beyond that, anything deeper than the questions we can answer today, I'm happy to follow up with y'all at a later date or after the presentation. Thank you much. Let's move on to the next part of our presentation.
Is that our cue?
Yes.
There, Devin?
Are you all right?
Yeah,
Cool.
we're ready to rock and roll. With that, thanks so much for your presentation there, Greg. Really appreciate the share. My name is Chris Hendricks. I'm the Policy Education Coordinator for the North Carolina Council on Developmental Disabilities, and I'll keep it there for now and pass it to my cohort. Go right ahead, Philip, when you're ready.
I am Philip Woodward. Good afternoon. I am a System Change Manager here at the North Carolina Council on Developmental Disabilities. I'm also hard of hearing myself. I wear 2 hearing aids, read lips, and no American Sign Language, and I'm using the captions and interpreting available today. Chris and I will be telling you about the Council on Developmental Disabilities and accommodating people with intellectual and other developmental disabilities. Next slide, please. So very quickly, does anybody, Craig mentioned earlier the ADA, or the Americans with Disabilities Act. Does anybody know when the ADA was signed? Chris is raising his hand, but somebody said 1992, not quite, but close. Any other guesses? And I'm looking for the actual date, not just the year.
1964.
1964, no, that was the Civil Rights Act, which in the 1960s. But the Civil Rights Act is tied to access. July 26th, 1990, yes, Jennifer Cook got it. That is when we celebrate the ADA. The information we are sharing with you today could help as many as 54 million Americans, because 1 out of 5 Americans report having a disability. There are 113.1 million families that have at least one family member with a disability. There are 4 million children ages 6 to 14 in our country who have a disability, and 72% of people 80 and older have disabilities, the highest of any age group. So Craig talked about accessibility being equitability and helping everyone. And these numbers help show that. I will turn it back over to Chris.
Thank you, Philip. Next slide, please. So the North Carolina Council on Developmental Disabilities estimate that almost 200,000 people with intellectual and developmental disabilities live in North Carolina. This includes persons with cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, autism, Fragile X syndrome, and various other conditions. I myself am a self-advocate with cerebral palsy, helping to present today. Next slide, please. So what is a developmental disability? It's a good question. The Developmental Disability Bill of Rights and Assistance Act of 2000 defines it a very specific way. It defines it as a mental or physical disability occurring before age 22 that results in substantial functional limitations in 3 or more of the following areas: self-care, receptive and expressive language, learning, mobility, self-direction, capacity for independent living, and economic self-sufficiency. Now, one other thing I'd like to mention, as you're looking at these 7 aspects that fall under the category of intellectual or developmental disability, remember that not all conditions are visible, right? So some of these needs are not always immediately present. So we need to try our best to not make assumptions when we're communicating and connecting with people. People first always comes first, which I think alludes to the next slide, if I remember correctly. Yay, look, I was right. Woo. So this goes lesson 1, use people first language when appropriate. So persons with a disability instead of handicapped person. and person who uses a wheelchair instead of confined to a wheelchair or wheelchair bound. And this is why I said when appropriate. However, some people prefer identity first language. Examples: autistic person instead of person with autism, and deaf or hard of hearing person instead of person who is deaf or hard of hearing, and instead of hearing impaired person or deaf and dumb person. And you can always, above all, if still confused, ask the person what he or she prefers to be called. For instance, while I do have cerebral palsy, I'll use myself as an example. I personally prefer to be seen as a person with a condition, right? I like to use the word condition because condition doesn't necessarily imply something positive or negative. It's a neutral word that I choose to use to empower myself, but that's my personal preference, and it's not going to be everyone's personal preference. And with that said, I'll pass it back to my colleague, Philip Woodward, to continue the presentation.
This is Philip here. We're going to talk a little bit about language accessibility in plain language. Sometimes when you are talking to or communicating people who have intellectual and other developmental disabilities, they might not be able to understand certain complex language, or they may have a lower reading level, so you want to be aware of the language you're using. I majored in English in college, and I used to work for the Department of Health and Human Services Office of Communication, so I know how important written and verbal communication can be. But here's an example of a message you might give. If somebody walks into your library and you ask them, have you entered the premises to conduct your employment search? They might have no idea what you're talking about. But if you phrase that question simply as, do you need help finding a job? That might be much more understandable. So that is an example of plain language. And I'll turn it over to Chris for the next slide.
So be prepared, and this really applies for any person that may walk, run, or roll through the door. Be prepared to rephrase your question if the person doesn't understand it, and ask questions that require a yes or no answer instead of an open-ended answer. So for example, what kind of job are you looking for versus do you want to work in a library? Usually the more direct way of communication, the simpler way the communication, the more accessible. When accommodating persons with IDD, consider the following. They may have difficulty communicating verbally with understandable speech. They may come with a direct support professional, a family member, or another caregiver. Be sure to speak to the person with intellectual and developmental disabilities and not just to their support person. I, as a self-advocate with cerebral palsy, have had to deal with several personal experiences in which I was not directly addressed, and it can it affected me negatively, and those are experiences that I've had to learn from and grow from. And those are the first two bullet points. Philip, I'm going to let you take the last two.
This is Philip again. If you do not understand what the person is saying, ask. You can repeat things back to the person to make sure you understand them and to make sure they understand you. So don't be afraid to ask them to repeat themselves. As a hard of hearing person, I've been asking people to repeat themselves my entire life. And also for deaf and hard of hearing people, consider using a pen and paper or an app such as Live Transcribe, which I'm holding up on my smartphone now, that will transcribe anything the microphone hears. Next slide, please. I do not want to steal any thunder from the North Carolina Division of Services for the Deaf and the Hard of Hearing that will be presenting later. But since I'm a hard of hearing person myself, I want to share a little bit about facilitating communication and providing communication accommodations. Ways to facilitate communication for deaf and hard of hearing people, as well as people with speech disabilities, can be texting. If you do have each other's phone numbers, you could text back and forth or email back and forth. Live Transcribe or other communication apps that you might be able to download to a smartphone or a tablet or a computer or other electronic device. And relay conference captioning. If you host meetings for the public, virtual meetings, you can set up captioning, and I shared the link earlier today. So that will give access to all the people in the meeting and let you save a transcript. So those are some examples for facilitating communication access. Next slide, please. Okay, I talked about virtual meetings already. Another thing you could do is allow participants to type their questions and comments in the chat feature. If they're having difficulty speaking what they want to say, or if their audio doesn't work. So that's something that can help everybody if their audio is not working. So you can always think of ways to accommodate everyone. Next slide, please. When you're accommodating people with IDD, some things that you want to think about regarding websites. This is more for if you do website stuff and not if you have somebody walk in the door. Although if you're sitting in front of the computer with them, you might want to think about things like this. Some websites, web browsers, and authoring tools might not provide full keyboard support. Or there might be insufficient time limit to respond to or complete a task, such as fill out an online form. Like if a person is slow at typing or they have a pen that they're wearing on their head, like our former council member Kelly Woodall on this picture, and the website times out after 1 minute, then they have to start over again. We want to find ways around that so they don't have to do that. Or certain controls might not have text alternatives. There might be missing visual and non-visual orientation cues and navigational aids. And there could be inconsistent, unpredictable, and overly complicated navigation mechanisms and page functions. And I'll repeat what Craig said earlier. Be patient. So if you're working with a person with IDD and helping them in front of the computer, be patient and figure out what their needs are to navigate through websites if they're looking for a job. Next slide. It's just questions. I don't know if we're saving questions till the end of the presentation or right now, but we want to give plenty of time to the other three divisions to present. So Chris and I are done, and I'll turn it back to Craig and Devon.
Thanks, Philip and Chris. This is Devin. We'll save questions for the end just to make sure that the other presenters have time. So far, we're good on time right now, halfway through. So I will hand it over to Christy to talk about partnering with employers for community inclusion.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You can go ahead to the next slide. For those of you that have not met me before, my name is Kristy Brinson, and I am Program Specialist for Business Engagement with Vocational Rehabilitation Services. And if you're not familiar with our agency, I just wanted to kind of give you a highlight real quick before I dive into other things that we do and how we can be a resource to you. But we do help people with disabilities achieve their goals for employment and independence. So for anyone that is watching or listening to the webinar, if you have a disability that prevents you from achieving the career success that you want or independence in the community of your choice, feel free to connect with us and reach out to us. We do have a website, and there is a link that can be shared to where you can find the local office that's near you, and we'll be glad to connect with you and help. So just for time, I'm gonna kind of go through real quickly some of the things that our agency does as far as helping an individual with a disability to be able to find employment. So we kind of work twofold. We work in a dual role. We have a team of business relations representatives that cover all 100 counties. And so what our roles are is we help the clients that we serve find employment. And when we're looking for employment, we tailor that to that individual, what their skills and abilities are, and the type of work that they are looking. Some individuals are looking for full-time, some are part-time, but we do tailor it to what will help them be successful. Our business relations team also works with employers across the state, within their own communities and statewide. And we build relationships with those employers and help them educate them about the value that individuals with disabilities bring to the workplace. So we hope that by educating employers, people are more open to have those discussions about what their needs are, what will help them perform their job duties. Because again, any one of us could be on the other side of the table needing that help. So we want to make it just a normal conversation as anything else. So the learning objectives real quickly is to share with you about how we partner with employers to help the clients we serve find employment, how we're partnering also with other agencies and the resources and services that we have available. So on the next slide, so I'll talk real quickly about the partnerships and how they really work. It is a team effort to help any of our clients to be able to find that job that works for them, because everybody's story is different. And everybody that has a specific disability may not always need the same accommodations. I may have anxiety and depression, and my friend may also, but it does not mean that the accommodations that we need would be the same, because again, everybody's story is different. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we have one mission, but we do have two customers. So we are really focused and dedicated on learning what the client's needs are, the individual with the disability, and finding out what they want to pursue as far as a career, how to help them get there, and also, you know, what kind of work schedule is best for them. Not everybody's the same. It may be that I'm a night owl and I prefer to work in the evenings, or it may be that I'm on medications in the mornings, and so mornings are a lot tougher for me. So I may need a little bit later in the day schedule. So we really find out and tailor again to that individual on what works best for them. So we work with the job seeker, and we also work with the employer across the state. We try to partner with them to find out what opportunities are there and match up the skill set from the individual we're serving to the employer with that position that's open. Next slide, please. So just to give you a little quick summary of our business relations representatives, they are called BERS, and so they wear many hats, but mainly what they do is, as I mentioned, they build partnerships that help the clients that we're serving as well as the employer. They're also creating opportunities for qualified candidates to go out and explore and prepare for competitive integrated employment. And the way that we do that, and I'll share with you in just a moment, is we have on-the-job training and we have internship opportunities that are extremely beneficial to not only the client, but also the employer. We support, of course, all employers. We help them try to build a diverse, disability inclusive workforce. And we are constantly providing outreach, education of disability awareness to the public in many ways, both in person and virtual. Next slide. Okay, so now let's take a quick look at our employer services, just so you'll have an idea of what we're doing behind the scenes to help an individual with a disability. So one of the things mentioned as on this slide is that we partner with our employer services team we kind of we find out what an employer is looking for to fill that position that they're posted. We a lot of times we'll tour that facility to see what is demanded of that position. That way we have, you know, a good visualization of what is needed for that person that's going to fill that position. You know, sometimes it could be the temperatures and the location of that office that may not be good, or we have to be mindful of when we're helping someone to fill a position. But the great part about what I feel of working with our agency is that anyone can look good on paper. So the employers really love the fact that when we refer a client to them that has a disability, we're also letting them know that we strongly and highly recommend that this person has the skill set, that they're dependable, that they're job ready, and would be an asset to that agency. So employers really love that when they're partnering with us. We also are working hard to help employers and their staff to overcome misperceptions about disability at work. Because to be honest, a lot of times people have this perception in their mind of what someone looks like or should be like having a disability, and a lot of times are a little bit on edge and nervous about hiring someone that has a disability. So we work really hard on education and helping with those misconceptions. And of course, we also provide a better understanding of how to interview, hire, and support employees with disabilities on the job. Many employers hire individuals, a lot of times they don't even know they have a disability because many disabilities are invisible. But sometimes after you get hired on a job, things can happen in life. You could be in an accident, you could receive that phone call, you know, of changes in your medical condition. Anything can happen, and at that point, a lot of times employees are like, what am I going to do? How am I going to maintain my job? And employers sometimes are uneasy, not sure what to do. So they get an opportunity to reach out to us, and we help provide consultation and sit down and figure out what is best, what will help that individual to maintain employment. Next slide. So just again, to give you a highlight, we share with our employers that we have a very impressive toolbox for them that is at no cost. So when employers partner with us, we want to really make them feel comfortable and not so concerned when they are working with an individual with a disability. We want it just to be a natural way of life because again, any one of us could have a disability and they not even know it. We help with recruitment and onboarding, as I've already mentioned. There are financial incentives for an employer to hire an individual with a disability. We also work with retention. As I mentioned, sometimes an individual attains an impairment after they've been hired and really needs some assistance on maintaining that job. We help with workplace accessibility, technology solutions, which blow me away all the time because technology is just insanely just amazing right now, and there's so many resources and solutions on helping an individual with technology to be able to perform their job duties. And of course, the last resource listed here as far as a service, disability awareness training. We provide that to the public. This is a 12-module program that has really, in my opinion, since the pandemic, has opened the eyes of North Carolinians across the board, especially within employers. They're finding out how valuable it is to hire someone that has a disability and that they want to go to work, because that is a huge challenge with employers right now. Next slide. Recruitment and onboarding, as I mentioned, we try to find out what the needs are of the employer, but then we go back and we identify candidates with disabilities that have the skills and experience, who are job ready and just would be an asset to be considered for a position. And so we we refer that individual to the employer and ask if they could, after reviewing, to hopefully give an interview opportunity. Okay, next. Okay. I know it's mentioned earlier about the number of individuals with disabilities within North Carolina. And I just wanted to kind of highlight that 1 in 5 adults does have a disability. So that could be your family member, a friend, a co-worker. A lot of times we all know someone that has a disability, and it may be, of course, you that has the disability. I was able to enjoy my mother for many years. She recently passed away a few years ago, but she did have a disability. She had panic disorder and anxiety, and I saw the challenges that she faced both personally and also at work. But what I also got to experience is that she worked for an employer who made that conversation very open and easy for her. So she was able to come forward and say, hey, this is what I need to get my job done. And they were able to make those accommodations. And it was a win-win because she was able to continue working for 34 years for that same employer. And they were able to retain a dedicated, skilled employee that just was wonderful to work with. I loved hearing from my mom's supervisors on the impact that she made at their place of business. And, you know, it really is about just having that open communication and feeling comfortable, because we easily could be on the other side of the table needing that help. We have talked with many employers, and what we have found is that the retention rate improves, and a lot of times it's very high because those individuals that are working that have a disability, they want to go to work, and they bring a lot to the table. I mean, they are great at problem solving, innovative thinking, a lot of high demand skills, because, you know, having a disability or attaining one, it's not discriminatory. It can affect anyone, whether it's your race, educational background, anything. It can happen to anyone. And I love the last bullet that's highlighted there, that more than 95% of HR professionals report that employees with disabilities regularly perform the same or better than their peers without disabilities. Next slide, please. So the pipeline development that I mentioned to you, we have a wonderful internship program within our agency that has been in hot demand. Gosh, it's really skyrocketed in the past year. It is a wonderful program where I think if you go to the next slide, I may have some more details on there. Yes. So it is a wonderful program where our agency, where VR 100% funds the internship. So the individual is paid to have an opportunity with an employer to gain recent work experience, maybe improve a skill set, and they're allowed to work up to 28 hours a week for up to 18 weeks. And this has really grown a lot in the past year. It is a win-win for everyone. It's almost like an extended application process, because to be honest, I meet with employers all the time. They're a little bit on the edge, a little bit scared about hiring someone with a disability. But what we want them to focus on is what that person can do, not what they can't do. And so the internship program helps with that. It gives the employer an opportunity to see that that person or someone with a disability can perform the job duties and do exceptionally well. And it gives them, gives that client the experience that they can add on their resume or their application to either be hired there or hired somewhere else in a, in a future career. But we have seen great success with the internship program. Next slide. As mentioned, retention is really, really important. We try to help with any kind of workplace modifications that may be needed. We do have engineers on staff and evaluators and other staff members that can really help keep a high value employee on the job. Okay, and we're closing up here. So I just want to share with you the workplace consultations that we mentioned. these are really to optimize productivity. We talk about how an individual with a disability brings a lot to the table. We want to make sure that we're fostering inclusive workplace for all the employees. And so this is where disability awareness training has really kicked in a lot, especially again, since the pandemic. I keep saying that, but since the pandemic, we've been able to not only be available in person, but more so virtually. So we're able to reach more North Carolinians to share about the value, again, of individuals with disabilities in the workplace. So on the next screen, I just want to give you a highlight here. The Windmills program is what it's entitled. It is, again, at no cost to employers, agencies, any partner. There are 12 different modules that someone can choose from for their staff to participate in. But I can tell you from experience by our presentations, it's impactful. It is a great reminder of all the value that's there. It just gives an individual with a disability an opportunity to do a job that they have the skill set for, to recognize the benefits of a diverse workforce, and learn. Sometimes you get to learn how to make some or how to implement some low-cost accommodations. And so on the next screen, I believe I've listed the ones that we are hosting this year. Last year, our agency started hosting Windmills virtually for the first time. We are hosting them once a quarter. We did that in 2022, and we're doing it this year in 2023. So here are the modules that we will be hosting, and we just look for that. There'll be flyers coming out. There'll be links coming out. But in April, we'll be hosting Taking the Emotion Out of Emotional Disabilities module, which is really, really important, especially with the increased awareness of mental health. In June, we also will have Reasonable Accommodations. In August, Encounter, and October, New Perceptions in Disability. And there's our link for you to join us or connect with us. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Christy. Folks, this is Devin again. I am going to turn it over to Sue and Christine Harrington from the Division of Services for the Blind.
I apologize. I'm having a hard time clicking my camera open. Not sure if you guys can see me or not, but anyway, hopefully you can hear. I'm Christine Harrington. I am the Rehabilitation Program Specialist for Employment Services with North Carolina Division of Services for the Blind. And I will let my colleague introduce herself also.
Hi, I'm Sue Obenshain. I'm the Business Services Representative with the Services for the Blind.
So I am going to try to keep my presentation a bit brief. I see we're running a little short on time, but I appreciate the presentation that Christy just gave with Division of Voc Rehab. We are essentially vocational rehabilitation for the blind. So our mission statement at North Carolina Division of Services for the Blind is that we provide services to people who are visually impaired, blind, and deafblind to help them reach their goals of independence and employment. Next slide. Within our division, we have three major programs. One is our Vocational Rehabilitation Program, which Christy just gave a wonderful overview of all that that entails. There are a few slight differences in some of the programs we do with DSB versus the general agency for vocational rehabilitation, but essentially we are the same program and the same agency. We also provide independent living rehabilitation, and our medical eye care program for persons that are low income and unable to afford their eye care needs. Next slide. I will say I am at Sue's request taking the bit of the lead on this, but please, Sue, I want you to pitch in anything at any time that you would like. So just some general guidelines for assisting blind and visually impaired patrons that may come in is one, approach them and ask if they need help, not to assume, but offer. I think a lot of people have already sort of spoken about that, but again, bear in mind that they can't see you. So they may not know that you're there and able to assist if you don't approach first and ask. Again, this was also mentioned by somebody before. If they are accompanied by a companion or a caregiver, always remember to speak to them directly. You don't need to ask their companion. They can't see, but they can certainly still speak for themselves. So giving that respect of speaking directly to them. Let the blind person state what type of assistance they would like rather than assuming a one-size-fits-all solution. What accommodations might help one person may not necessarily be very helpful to the next person with vision loss. If you're offering sighted guide, that's often something in the beginning that can be a bit awkward if somebody doesn't know how to assist somebody with physically getting to the location they need to get within your library. Offer your elbow and let them hold your elbow rather than you taking their arm or taking their hand to try to guide them or lead them. Offer your elbow. And again, they may not want to, but you can ask, would you like to take my elbow and I'll guide you to where we're going. If they are accompanied by a service animal, important to know that etiquette is that you do not pet or interact with the animal while they're working. They are doing their job. It's really difficult for some people, I know. They're so cute, but it's really important that the animal maintains concentration on the job that they're doing, and that is keeping their handler safe and getting them to where they need to go. So not interacting with the animal, and then you can ask them that you can still offer an elbow and guide them and let the animal follow, or you can ask if they would like to give the animal a command to follow you, and then you can just walk. And most guide animals can do that as well. Sue, were you about to say something?
Yes, I would like to add, in preparation for this event, I spoke with some of the folks I'm currently working with, and they asked me to mention that when a person is visually impaired, there's no need to speak more loudly to them. Certainly, as you're talking to them and assessing their needs, you may note that there could also be a hearing deficit, but generally you don't, unless someone asks you, you can use your regular talking voice. Oftentimes people may need assistance on the computer to get oriented to the keyboard, because keyboards are slightly different. The computer setup is different. They may need a little bit of assistance just to get oriented, to get started. And other patrons may need someone who offers them more support. it can vary. I was also asked to point out that for a person who's visually impaired, a phone is very integral to their life. Using voiceover and keeping records for job searching, they're going to have a lot of that information in their phone. So just be aware that there's going to be a need for them to use their phone as they work. That's important to consider when you're thinking about privacy issues as well. So that goes to also providing good spaces for people to work in and talking to the individual and finding out, what situation works best for them. Okay. Are we ready for the next slide?
No, I think they did already put us on the next slide, which
Okay.
is great. And so, yeah, I think somebody just put in chat about this, getting Braille, getting materials translated to Braille. That's great. That's a wonderful way to improve accessibility. But one thing to just kind of keep in mind is Braille is not very helpful to many blind people. I think Braille's kind of a dying art from what I'm understanding. There's few, and I think somebody just quoted a statistic, 8% of blind people actually read Braille. I think especially with young people these days, they say they don't see any reason to learn it. It's a very difficult skill to learn if you lose your vision later in life. So that's a big part of our population too. So it's great. Those who do read Braille would probably be very appreciative, but when just somebody with vision loss walks in, don't necessarily assume like, hey, you're great, you're here, I've got Braille for you, and they're going to be taken care of, because probably they're not going to benefit from Braille unless they're one of the 8%. Blindness and visual impairment can look quite different from one person to another. For instance, did you know that it is possible for a person to have 20/20 visual acuity and still be legally blind? The way that can happen is somebody can lose their visual fields. We have our peripheral vision, and there are eye conditions that cause a person's vision to narrow in over time, and eventually they're looking through a very tiny pinhole and can lose all their vision altogether. But that central vision can be 20/20, and they can still be considered legally blind. Low vision can look like lots of different things. People with low vision and blindness can often use speech software, high magnification software, and even built-in accessibility features on their computers, phones, and tablets. One example of that is, computers have built-in accessibility features. I think we're going to talk about that on the next slide, but even just something as simple as hitting Control+, holding down the control button and just hit +++, you're going to magnify the text on the screen of the computer for somebody, and that may really be all they need. In addition, there are accessibility technologies such as JAWS, which stands for Job Access with Speech, NVDA, non-visual desktop access. I don't know what the resources are in the libraries, but if some of your computers can get that kind of software downloaded, that can be very beneficial and helpful. But again, I think we need to realize there's also some people with blindness and visual impairment that have very low technology skills, and having JAWS is not going to help them at all. So that's where I think that communication piece just comes in, that people need to be able to just have an open conversation about what will help you to be able to access this today. What can I do to assist, and then you have to see what resources you have. But, you know, some of those built-in things with Control Plus is helpful. And then there's also Zoom Text is a software that can be downloaded that can not only increase the font size, but you can change the backgrounds and the contrast and the glare and things like that. So anyway, everybody has to sort of look at their individual situations and see what they can bring on board. But those things can be very beneficial and helpful. And then we always say, if, you know, somebody comes in who is blind, visually impaired, low vision, please make them aware that the NC Division of Services for the Blind does specialize in vocational rehabilitation for job seekers with vision loss. Then I've got a list of our local district offices and the counties served. So if you need to refer somebody to the office in your area, these are the first three. Yep, I think we skipped one. The Winston said, okay, there we go. So we've got we've got 7 district offices in total. And the last on this list is the Winston-Salem district office. And that is it for our portion of the presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christy and Sue. This is Devin. I want to introduce our final presenter, Jennifer. Jennifer, I'm so sorry for being a little bit over time, but I'm sure if folks want to stick around for a couple of minutes to hear what you have to share, that would be excellent.
Hello, everyone. This is Jennifer Cook. I'm with the Division of Services for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. Next slide, please. We serve consumers in all 100 counties across North Carolina. We have 7 regional centers. You can see where they are located from the map. You can go ahead to the next slide, it's fine. So this picture is an audiogram. If you see the different frequencies represented here, there's normal hearing there in the middle. There is mild, moderate, severe, and profound. You notice the yellow area, that's called the speech banana. And that's where people can hear conversations clearly and have word discrimination. So people who have a mild or moderate hearing loss start to struggle with hearing normal conversation levels. And that's the range at which frequencies those sounds start to drop off. And they have different representations by picture of the sounds that a person in those hearing ranges can't hear. So at the bottom, you know, a profound loss person may only be able to hear the sound of an airplane engine. And so there's different representations there. Next slide. So these are different communication accommodations that hard of hearing individuals use. Now, when I say hard of hearing, I'm talking about people that typically do not use sign language. They could be a hearing aid. They could either have a 1 hearing aid or use 2 hearing aids. It could either be a behind the ear aid or in the ear aid. And sometimes this is an invisible disability because you won't be able to see the hearing aid. Other people use a personal amplifier, which could look like this, and they will use a headset to go along with that. So the microphone would be placed. That is more affordable for some consumers. Those are only about $200, and hearing aids can range from $500 all the way up to $3,000 or $4,000 per hearing aid. Some hard of hearing consumers use CART, like you see the live captioning going on here. There is someone who is live captioning this event, so everything that is said, the person is typing, and they're doing it remotely. It could be remote, or CART can be provided in person, where the person actually comes into where the meeting is happening and types that captioning live. Can be useful. People use speech to text. Philip already mentioned this previously. The app on the phone, Live Transcribe. And there are different apps. That's not the only one that they use. But be aware that you're only going to get about 80-90% accuracy. It really depends on which app you use. It's usually not going to be 100% accurate. And then, of course, there's always the pen and paper, which is a low-tech option. Some people use Bluetooth so they can stream the sound right to their hearing aid through their phone. Let's go on to the next slide. This is for an individual who identifies as deaf and uses sign language to communicate. American Sign Language, which involves not only the hand signs, but also the space and the facial expressions, body. I'm showing you, you saw my body movements. It's a very animated language, ASL. Other people use contact language or pigeon sign language, which is American Sign Language, but more English word order. Some individuals use signing exactly English, which is word for word. They will sign the words for I am going to the store. And then an older style, this is very rare, you hardly ever see this anymore, is all finger spelling. And then there's cued speech, finally, which is not a signed language. It's more of a visual hand shapes for supporting speech. And it all happens right near the mouth for speech reading. Next slide. So some communication tips for individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing: make sure you speak slowly and clearly, but do not over enunciate. Always check for clarification. Warning, I always tell you, some of us will tend to kind of smile and nod, but we really don't understand what you're saying. So what I would suggest is that you ask the person to repeat back to you, or don't say, do you understand me? And look for a yes or no. Can you say something to draw out the information that you thought you gave to them to see if it got through? Patience is really important as well in this case. And please don't assume, what their preferred method of communication is. Go ahead and ask them that. Next slide, please. Oh, this is the rest of this slide. I will add, it is very important to have less background noise. So find an area that has less background noise. If that happens, it causes more stress on the individual because they're already struggling to understand. So if there's a private room available, or maybe can find a corner or somewhere where you have less people around to have the conversation. Can you go back to the last slide, please? Actually. Oh, there you go. And the lighting is also important, and maintain eye contact with the individual. That is very key. I know some of us are uncomfortable looking at someone right in the eye, but that is so important in our culture because we're depending on visual cues. Some of us are lip reading, and we're looking at that part of your body. So if you're looking away from us, we can't maintain that contact. So there also is no relation between speech and hearing. So a person can be profoundly deaf, but have, like myself, I went to the school for the deaf. I had speech classes growing up. So my speech is intelligible. I can speak. Some things I say is not clear. So don't assume because someone is speaking to you that they also can hear, because there is no relation between good speech and hearing. Next slide, please. Modes of communications for a person who is deaf and hard of hearing. This one is for tactile communication with individuals who are deaf-blind. They could need close vision signing. So the proximity to the person you're signing to would be close. Also, your signing space would have to be small. The person who has Usher syndrome, for example, which you heard discussed before about the tunnel vision, when a person loses their peripheral, so you have to maintain a space in which they can see. Some people use tracking, which means they would take a hand of the person that's signing to them so they could be able to follow where the signs are within their visual field. Full tactile is one-handed or two-handed, where the deaf blind person would put their hand on the interpreter's hand and follow along in ASL that way. It would either be one-handed or two-handed, depending on the fluency of the deaf blind person, whether they use one hand or two hands. And then finger spelling works with deaf blind as well. Next slide. Here's some other things you might encounter. Some people are able to read lips. You will see different types of assistive listening devices, like I just showed you a minute ago. You'll notice hearing aids, cochlear implants are also something you may notice. And the Hedoma method, that's also a very rare. That's for deaf blind individuals who they take their thumb and it will be on your lips, and then they would hold your speech. We don't really see that often anymore. I personally haven't seen that because that's an outdated system, but there is a potential that that would be run into. Next slide, please. So technology that is used, CART and captioning, which I already talked about before, for people who have some vision or low vision, and they can still able to see the captioning as long as you invert the colors or change the font sizes. It can be used with a laptop that is hooked to their other devices to be able to read that. Some deafblind do use Braille, but that varies, as was stated before. Next slide. So this is a newer communication mode for deafblind individuals. It's called protactile. And this is to give more environmental information. For example, you use their hand to do the signs. So you can't sign something in space because the person can't see it. So it's touch communication. So this is really just getting more popular now in the deafblind community. The other mode of communication within that is haptics. And it's symbols that are given through touch on the body to let people know what's going on in the room. I'm trying to give you an example. So a person may come behind a person who's deafblind and draw a smile space on their back and point at where the person's in the room who's doing that. If there's people in the corner of the room laughing. Now, I'm not the expert in this, but you're basically telling the deafblind person through touch what is going on in the room around them. For example, if a deafblind person is presenting something, they would want to know if someone's laughing at what they said or rolling their eyes or coughing in the corner or whatever they're doing. So that all can happen without having to do the tactile communication. They just do it on the back. So that's a nice discreet way of communicating with people who are deafblind. Next slide, please. Here's some other ways for communicating with deafblind individuals: bold and large print. A large Sharpie does well because you want it to be bold. If you don't have any paper available and you don't have any other options, you can, some people use print on palm. So we'd use the open face of their hand and then print the actual letters to spell out letters for them. Other ways, if you see the picture of the toilet paper over there, the example would be if you're trying to get them to understand what an object is, you may be able to take this, you have to be creative. So you take whatever object you're trying to explain, put it in their hand, let them feel it, and then go ahead with the symbol or whatever you're working with. Next slide. So this is to indicate that one size does not fit all people with hearing loss. So just as we said before, ask, because all of these different people could use different methods to communicate. There are a lot of things that, you know, interpreting services are nice to have. You have to plan that in advance, so keep that in mind. So if you're having some sort of you know, event or something like that, that needs interpreter needs to be requested ahead of time. And then so you have to learn to use other things in the moment. When you do request an interpreter, make sure you give details about what the presentation will be. Is there 2 presenters? Is it 2 hours or 1 hour? Is, you know, you're going to have visuals, or is there PowerPoints with it? So if you let the interpreters know that you hire all the details you need, they can provide a better service for you once they get there. Because if you realize, you know, think about it this way. You're not getting the interpreters for me, the deaf person, you're also getting it for yourself. So the more information you give will make it better for people to, make it better for everybody for communication purposes. I also want to give you several tips. Next slide. If you have an ongoing event, here's the guidance for interpreters. If you have a routine event that comes up, storytelling time or something, it may be a good idea to advertise. If there's an accommodation needed, please reach out to the contact person, and then they can request that. Keep in mind your space, who the audience is going to be, and who needs that accommodation. And it has to be well advertised, because timing is critical to getting a good accommodation. It's not something that you can decide on a whim and say, hey, we'll get an interpreter for this. So you have to think outside of the box. DSDHH is here. If you're worried about how to do that or wondering what the best way to do that is, you can reach out to us, because equal communication is important to have, but it is a challenge to get there. So we have to try to be creative sometimes. So think outside of the box. And, when all else fails, you can use low tech if you don't have the high tech option available. Okay, I think I'm good. So I'll wrap it up.
Thanks so much, Mark and Jennifer. I really appreciate everyone sticking around a little bit over time. We had some questions in the chat, but I think that they've been answered. One thing that I will share is, this was just added at the end. We have the contact information for all of the presenters today. If you'd like to reach out to them directly and potentially partner for vocational rehab, or if you have any sort of follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. They are your statewide contacts, and we are very lucky that we were all able to get them together today to talk and share their expertise. But with that, I will close things out. I hope everybody has a great rest of their Wednesday afternoon, and hopefully get a chance to go outside and enjoy the warm weather. But thanks, everybody.